Hi, this is Tisch Aitken, and Summer Solstice begins tonight at 10:42 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time and at 7:42 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And the Northern Hemisphere, that is when the sun is at the highest point above the celestial equator, and it's the longest day of the year. In the Southern Hemisphere, this is when the sun is at the lowest point in relation to the celestial equator, and it's the shortest day of the year. And this is when the sun stops. Solstice, sol, S-O-L in Latin means sun, and sistere means to stop. The sun stops, and you reflect on what you want to nurture and nourish and grow in the season ahead. And all the cardinal signs launch seasons: Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. And this is the beginning of a whole new season. And I will admit this is a difficult solstice chart. This begins Cancer season because the sun ingresses into Cancer at 10:42 p.m. and it will remain in Cancer through July 20th. And the sun in Cancer is a time of taking care of yourself, focusing on home and family. And Jupiter recently entered the sign of Cancer earlier in the month on June 9th, where it loves to be. It's exalted and abundant and fertile in Cancer. However, it already had two challenges right after it entered Cancer. It clashed with Saturn. Jupiter is expansion, freedom, and abundance. Saturn is restriction, constriction, rules, regulation, and authority. It can definitely put a kibosh on your plans to expand, and it also can make it is difficult with the government and the economy. Sometimes there are expanded expectations with Jupiter, and Saturn puts a reality check in that. This is the third and final. They clashed on August 19th of last year, as well as December 24th. This is the first time they were not in Gemini and Pisces respectively, because Jupiter's now in Cancer and Neptune is in Aries, this time through September 1st. It returns next year on February 13th. But not an easy energy. And then right after that, 3 days later, Jupiter clashed with Neptune. Well, Neptune is the hippie planet spaced out on acid, listening to Pink Floyd or whatever at this point. But Neptune is escapism, dreams, it is spirituality, it is psychic ability, it's compassion, but it also is escapism. It can be self-destruction with escapism, and it can be deception. And this can exaggerate people wanting to really tune out, having trouble focusing. And these aspects, both of them, can make people feel very depressed. Jupiter clashing with Saturn in Aries. Saturn is in its fall position in Aries, but it's saying you've got to work extra hard for building what you want to create and build. Saturn in Aries is making you fully aware of all of your limitations, both that surround you and within you. What do you need to improve in your life, where you need to get better at certain areas or be more disciplined? But there also realistically could be restrictions and challenges around you that are not only of your own doing, but regardless, you need to work with them. And Aries is such a driven sign that I find, even though it's in its fall position, it says, let's do it, let's fight hard. And this round, as opposed to the mid-late 90s, Neptune is informing the journey. And Neptune takes approximately 165 years to orbit. And Neptune is now close to the world point. It entered Aries at the end of March. It will remain there through October 22nd. And it's saying, let's create a new spiritual identity. A wounded warrior that fights for integrity and for character and taking a stand for what you believe in. And look at the solstice chart. Jupiter's now in Cancer, another cardinal sign, a water sign that's very emotionally based and informed through its intuition. Mars, pushes Aries ahead. Well, the moon guides Cancer, and the moon is very much working with your feelings and your intuition. But Jupiter in Cancer is a great placement. But right now, it's clashing with Saturn and Neptune. And we have Saturn and Neptune traveling very closely together. And they haven't met up directly since November of 1989. So that's a long time ago, and that's when Saturn was in its rulership in the sign of Capricorn. So now we have the idea that Saturn is in its fall position, not in its dignity, with Neptune, and they're going to meet up exactly next February 20th. But this is where you can take steps this summer, even though it's not comfortable. Right after we have the solstice, we've got Mars forming a quincunx to Neptune. Mars is now in Virgo. It ingressed into Virgo on June 17th, and it will remain there through August 6th. And Mars in Virgo is very hardworking. It fine-tunes the details. It can be a little bit too, critical of some of the details. It's perfectionistic, but it loves to work hard, and we need to work hard now. But Mars is forming some challenging aspects, and there are Yods in this solstice chart, which means more discomfort as we deal with Jupiter expanding something that makes us feel secure in Cancer, and that's not all easy. When Saturn entered Aries, we knew it wasn't easy, and yet it's propelling us to fight harder, to take a stand for what we believe in, to work hard to build our dream in a world where things are very much in flux. But does not mean you have to focus on your goals. It's already been 5 years post-pandemic, and you're not going to give up on your ambitions. You can't. You got to keep going. And what's interesting is the Saturn-Jupiter square on the 15th spoke back to when Saturn and Jupiter met up for the first time. This is a new story for the next 800 years when they formed in an air sign, 0 degrees of Aries, of Aquarius, the very first degree of Aquarius. They met up on December 20th of 2020, and at that time, that was before Pluto entered Aquarius, which it did on March 23rd for a little bit, went back and forth in 24. At the very end of 24, on November 19th, it entered Aquarius, where it'll be for the next 19 years. And this is a whole new era. And so now we've got Saturn and Neptune in Aries. We've got Jupiter in Cancer. We have 4 outer planets in new signs. Saturn and Neptune are going to dip back into Pisces. They're not done. Jupiter remains in its exaltation, where it loves to be, through June 30th. It may have started on a rocky beginning, but it is helping us to let our emotions and our intuition and what makes us feel good, it's allowing that to guide us to manifest a new future. And right now it's not comfortable. Well, the world is not comfortable. I don't know anybody that feels completely secure or comfortable right now. So I think that makes sense. And knowing that, right after the solstice, Mars forms a quincunx to Neptune. Mars rules the sign of Aries. It's how you move ahead. It's forming an uncomfortable aspect of readjustment to Neptune, which is dreams and illusion. Well, again, it can feel hard to get this done. Tomorrow on the 21st, Mercury, the planet of communication and networking, meets up and forms a beautiful aspect to the true node of fate. It makes a good angle to the north node of fate. and this occurs at 4 o'clock a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Great time to be a part of an event. I'm actually going to be working at an event tomorrow. If you're in the Philly, South Jersey area, it's just 25 minutes right outside of Philly. It's called Venus Moon in Glendora, New Jersey. There will be 30 vendors doing all sorts of readings and healing sessions honoring the summer solstice, and it's going to be amazing. So I hope you can make it, and I'll put a link to it on my site. But with that said, it's a good time for networking. If you're pitching ideas for work, it's also good. You could have fated opportunities come up. But on the 22nd, we have more challenging aspects, and these are all being reflected in this solstice chart. Okay, so we've got Venus forming a semi-square to Saturn. Venus loves being in Taurus, where it currently is, and it will be forming a challenging aspect to Saturn in Aries, saying that you can't get what you want, everything that you want. You can't always get what you want, okay? Or you can't get everything you want right now. Or you can get what you want, but there will be delays with Saturn. And then there's a more hopeful aspect. Mars forms a positive aspect to Jupiter, the luckiest planet, at 6:32 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, saying, okay, it may feel confusing to do what you need to do. Saturn is in its fall position. There are all these difficult aspects. Saturn and Neptune traveling very closely together, which they are in Aries this summer, makes it feel hard to build that dream, but you don't want to give up on that dream. And so Mars and Jupiter in harmony are saying, feel confident, feel hopeful. Don't give up on what you're trying to do. Then we have the Sun clashing with Saturn, planet of restrictions, at 2:35 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. That's saying, okay, it's still, difficult to get this going. You feel setbacks. Saturn's in Aries. I want to get this done, but I don't believe in myself. But you got to keep going. Don't give up. Jupiter's in Cancer, and there's some very magical aspects that will be coming into effect later in the summer and certainly in the next few years. So take the micro and the macro steps this summer with Saturn and Neptune in a new sign forming a new dream. Right after Sun clashes with Saturn, we've got Venus forming a challenging aspect to Neptune. It semi-squares Neptune at 2:04 p.m. When does it do that? Later on that day. And so it's hard, it feels hard to get things going, but do not give up. Do not give up, okay? That will be, when is it? It's at 3 something. I can't remember. It makes me mad that I can't remember that because Mars is in Virgo, and I've got my moon in Virgo. But it's not always about the time it happens. It influences that day. Know that in this solstice chart, there are 2 Yods. So we've got, let's see, Saturn and Neptune are now in the early degrees of Aries, and they're forming what's known as a sextile to Pluto and Aquarius because they're 60 degrees apart. Air and fire work well together. Water and earth work well together. So we've got Pluto in Aquarius at 3 degrees. We've got Saturn at 1 degree of Aries and Neptune at 2. So they're forming a helpful aspect, but both are forming a quincunx to Mars in Virgo. So you've got the 2 rulers of Scorpio, Pluto and Aquarius, quincunx Mars, and Mars is also quincunx Neptune, Saturn and Neptune in Aries. Well, that's a challenging energy. It's known as a finger of God, but not easy. Emphasizing more that this is an uncomfortable journey to fight for what you want, but you will get there. And if you also look at it, the Sun and Jupiter in Cancer are forming a sextile to Mars and Virgo. So they're 60 degrees apart, and they're both in conjunct Pluto. So there are really two Yods going on. Again, fated opportunities. Mars and Pluto are involved in both Yods. Now you have, Mars is involved in both Yods. But now you've got Jupiter, the luckiest planet, with the sun, how you shine. And I think it's, again, Jupiter loves being in Cancer. The sun will meet up with Jupiter on the 24th. I'm only getting as far as the 23rd right now. We have a glorious new moon in Cancer on the 25th that will be conjunct Jupiter, the luckiest planet, in its exaltation. This is not an easy month. We know that already. It started off with a bang the first half. The second half is going to be like those hazy days of summer, but it's pretty early in the summer to be this hazy. And the reason I say that is we just had Jupiter square Neptune and really, add that energy and that tone. But at the end of the month, we're going to feel Neptune retrograde because it's going to retrograde on July 4th. We feel an outer planet retrograde 5 days before and 5 days after. Saturn will retrograde on July 13th. We'll also feel that 5 days before and 5 days after. They're both retrograde for about 40% of the year, so that in and of itself is not a big deal. But when they station, retrograde or direct, that augments the energy. So there'll be more of a Neptunian emotional tone as we get to the end of the month. And there's a lot of magic. I'm going to reiterate that and repeat that and say that because we want to fight for what's right. And you also don't want to give up on your dreams. Neptune in a new sign could bring, I think, such exciting things. And with Uranus entering Gemini on July 7th, that's right around the corner. That's another outer planet that's changing signs. That's the 5th out of, if you include Pluto in November. That's going to be huge, and it'll remain in Gemini through through November 6th, and that's going to bring a lot of invention and innovation. It's going to help the travel business a lot because that's been suffering a lot with local and with buses and trains and airplanes. It's been hitting a lot of stuff. So and it's also going to bring a lot of ways to learn and connect and market yourself and save time. I think it'll help to save time. So listen, good luck, take care, and happy solstice. All right, thanks.